Oh, whoops. I totally did that wrong. Oh, well. Yeah, looks like we're live. I have to be out of the hotel room at noon Central Time, so I only have the hour. Yeah, looks like we're live. I have to be out of the hotel room at noon. Oh, hello. Central Time, so streaming's working. Played it back at me. All right, yeah. Last week, where was I last week? I think I was traveling last week too.
Hey.
Hey, John.
We're the car group.
Yeah, I'm the only civilized person in a hotel room.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not what Twitter says. Twitter says you're not civilized either, so.
That's right.
What happened?
What happened? Oh, man.
What a fun week.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's funny because I was so burned out before it happened. And it all just kind of piled on and I was just kind of done. And yeah, I got a good night's sleep last night. Slept in a bit this morning. And boy, I feel a ton better.
Yeah. It kind of reinvigorates you to a little bit of a degree after it down. You're like,
Yeah.
well, you know what? Fuck these guys.
Yeah, so John's a dirty racist, and I'm a dirty racist. So
Hey, I'm also a misogynist, but I don't know the difference between a sexist and a misogynist. I guess a misogynist is a sexist who's only sexist against women. Is that the difference? I don't know.
John, see,
Yeah,
you're betraying your
asking-
bias because you're sexist against anyone who's not a man. That's not necessarily the same thing to some of these folks.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, okay. So I'm a misogynist. I see.
If you're asking the literal definition of misogyny, yes, it is hatred towards women.
No, but see, Chuck is saying that that's not inclusive. See, because I could be a misogynist and I could hate. I can hate women. I could also hate transgender people and non-binaries and all whatever the spectrum of the rainbow is. So I would still be a misogynist. So I think maybe that's why they're using that classification instead of just sex. Because if I was just sexist,
So I take it that you guys got into some Twitter fight over this over this topic.
Yeah, I mean the long and the short of it. I don't know if I want to rehash the whole thing, but you know, the 2-minute version. And yes, I'm leaving a bunch of stuff out for all the haters that are going to watch this.
Yeah.
Is Amy Knight posted a post on Twitter and basically said, "I'm glad I'm not learning to program these days because there are a lot of angry people out there and it makes it unpleasant." They took that to mean that she was being mean to them and they just went after her. So John went out there and let's just say he was less than nice.
Yes, I was not civil.
Yeah. And so they got real upset with him. And a few people were trying to get my attention, right? And by the time I got on, I had a few people basically mention me either saying, Chuck, you've got to cut all ties with John. And I'm just like, well, wait, what's going on? And then a few people were saying, hey, Amy's being, you know, people are going after her on Twitter. And so I didn't realize the two were connected until about 10 minutes in, you know, trying to figure out what the heck's going on. So I got on and I looked at everything and I made a video. It's about 35 minutes. And I basically said, I was like, look, folks, let's all just be decent, civilized people. And, you know, if you have a problem with something somebody said or did, you know, talk it out, figure it out. And anyway, so then they went in and they essentially picked apart everything I said and pointed out all the places where I used all the wrong words to talk about it instead of actually addressing, I don't know, any of the actual arguments I made.
Which is the modus operandi of social justice warriors. That's why you can't reason with them. They just look for fault, and then and that's why you never apologize to them either, is because that's what will happen. But
So,
I mean, not that you tried to apologize, you didn't apologize,
I
but
didn't.
they still lambasted you because that's what they do. If you're not 100% with them,
yeah,
you are the enemy.
Yep. But I wasn't even going to make it today because I'm in Nashville. I'm here for a retreat with a bunch of guys that I get together with every week. And I just kind of squeezed this in because I don't actually have to be down there for another hour and a half or 2 hours. So I was like, okay, well, you know, I'll just jump on and talk about it for a few minutes and you know. But yeah, so I did tell folks that, you know, if I was going to maintain a relationship with John or Amy, that it was none of their business, and that didn't make them happy either.
Right.
So what I don't understand is that how do John I can understand, but you are in the programming domain. John is obviously in programming domain as well, but his channel is slightly different. You know, it is personal development more than programming. So being a programmer, how do you get into this?
Oh, there's a huge social justice movement in the programming space. And yeah, a lot of people I talk to, they do it because they're scared. A lot of people I talk to, they do it because they believe that there's injustice in there and they want to help. And a lot of people do it because they're kind of rabid about this stuff and they're just going to push and, you know, and go after it no matter what. So you kind of get the spectrum there, but yeah, there are a lot of people out there that are afraid of getting canceled or dumping a bunch of money into running a conference and then having it, you know, torpedoed or losing their job or things like that. And so a lot of people really aren't willing to speak up, and it's actually kind of sad because, you know, I think if we could get everybody to sit down and actually talk through a lot of this, I think we'd find that we agree on a lot of it, not all of it, but we agree that people should be treated fairly, and, you know, some of the things that have happened in the past are not cool, but you can't even talk about that stuff because unless you want to tear white men apart, you can't be part of the movement. So
I have a slightly different take on this. That you know, maybe there is, in any system there will be injustice.
I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So what I was saying is that in any system, there will be a lot of injustice, no matter what you do, right? Some people and even some groups will be unjustly treated, and that's you know, you can make you have to work so that that injustice goes away. However, if you look at personal stuff, how to improve personally, fighting for the group, fighting for yourself is much easier than fighting for the group. So you can make such tremendous progress by working on yourself than worrying about what happens to your group. And there are a lot of things that look like a disadvantage, or you don't have the privilege, but they are not. Like if somebody calls me as a brown entrepreneur, you don't have the privileges. And this has happened once. I feel pretty amazed that they have a very little idea about how the world works. Now, because I'm a brown entrepreneur, not in spite, right? Part of you know, whatever little success I have, part of the reason is because I'm a brown entrepreneur, right? Not in spite of, right? And the reason is, for example, if you think about, I have a lot of good AI people working out of India for me, right?
Exactly.
And that is possible only because I grew up in India, right? I have the right connections there. I know which colleges to go to and all those things, right? The thing that was as an Indian person coming here, the thing that was a disadvantage, right? That has suddenly morphed into a huge advantage. Huge, not even close. Like I know a lot of people who have the same level of talent, but they cannot leverage this great community from India, AI community from India, because they are not from that country, right? So it's not a disadvantage at all. Similarly, you know, there are small disadvantages sometimes with the accent, etc., and that goes away. You change your accent. You don't expect people to understand your accent. There are so many people. So you change your accent to a level where people start understanding, and that's what happens, right? I still have an accent, but people don't have to ask me again and again what I'm saying, right?
Yep.
They just get it now, and that's when your accent stops changing as soon as people start understanding you. So this is the thing that I don't understand. The other thing is that the disadvantage being in the United States, the disadvantages that you have from one community to the other, it is minute. It is minute. Like, I mean, maybe there is some, there has to be some disadvantage in some, some classes.
Sure.
However, if you're considering disadvantage, then you consider how lucky you are compared to the rest of the world, right?
Yeah.
So you're comparing like maybe a 10% disadvantage here in the United States, and the advantage you have over the rest of the world. People in India, they are just as smart as you, and you make 5 times their income, and then you complain about the minor disadvantage you have, the 5%, 10% disadvantage you have, while enjoying this geographic advantage over everybody else, right? So that is what I find quite amusing, um, that we are talking about very little differences, and all the outrage. It's not people in India who are complaining, oh, we are so far behind people in the United States. It is people in the US who are complaining about small disadvantages, which you can actually maybe overcome if you are, by your personal, if you develop yourself personally, you can overcome a lot of it. Maybe not all of it, obviously, but a lot of it. The other thing is, it also backfires. So the whole talk about privilege, it backfires in two different ways. One is, okay, there is obviously a difference between different groups. Some groups do have a little bit more privilege, but the moment you think about it, you have put yourself in such a disadvantage, right?
Yeah.
I like giving this example. Suppose you're going to run a 100-meter sprint, and somebody goes and tells you that your competitor has better shoes, and it has been scientifically proven that these shoes are going to make them run 20% faster, right? Now, that has completely screwed your mind, right?
Right.
You are constantly thinking about some real or imaginary disadvantage, but that has screwed your mind. I mean, if you did not know that information, then you might have been better off, because a lot of the game is internal mind game that you're playing with yourself, not with others, right? That's those are my few 2 cents. Uh, I tell my son also, uh, like, he's 9 years old, and sometimes he hears these things, and I tell him that you should be lucky that you're you're brown.
Yeah.
Look, and he said, why do you say so? I said, look at the CEO of Microsoft, look at the CEO of Google, and look at all
Yeah.
these people. There must be some advantage that brown people have, because of which these guys are on the top. So you should feel lucky. So now he never has to complain about those things, no matter what he listens.
Yeah. Well, and you look at Satya Nadella, for example, over at Microsoft. I mean, the guy got into Microsoft early. He
Yeah.
worked hard. He proved
Yeah.
himself. I mean, and that's what it really is. That's what
Yeah.
it's about, in my opinion. So,
And I mean, I don't know why people find so difficult to believe that in this country, the United States, uh, the level of discrimination you face is so tiny. Like, even in India. So I live, India is very diverse. If I go from one part of India to another, I will face more discrimination compared to when I come to as a immigrant here.
Yeah.
So I could go to the western part of India, and because people know that I'm not from the western part of India, I will face more discrimination rather than less discrimination, right? So it's a very good system here. People who work hard, they have a very good chance of succeeding in this country.
And that is something that has been drowned in all this conversation. People are talking about small differences and not looking at the big picture, that by and large, this country is very, very fair actually.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head for sure. Exactly right. I 100% agree.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know that I have anything to pile on with. I think you pretty much, said it the right way. So
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, the whole thing. It's what's interesting is how it got twisted to the race and sex thing. And for those who don't know, so like a little bit more of the story. What happened was, so I had obviously jumped in to defend Amy, but more so to take a stand against the social justice warriors, because this wasn't the first time they did this to Amy, and this wasn't the first time they did this to someone else.
Right.
They basically are a walking, lynch mob that looks for people to jump on and cancel, deplatform them, cancel culture, right? Try to get them. They call up employers. They call up conference organizers. They get people uninvited from conferences. They get people fired from their jobs, right? So this isn't like they're just like arguing with people online, right? It's not like I'm just jumping into some kind of. These are people that are actually doing real harm to real people. And so I jumped in there.
It's funny how many of those people actually came to me too during the course of this. By the way, you should know that this is what happened to me because of these folks.
Right, exactly, yeah. And so I jumped in there and I was nasty, right? I mean, I did, but I was just trying to stir up the hornet's nest as much as possible, get as many people attacking me instead of Amy as possible, because I thought, hey, I'm pretty invincible. What are they going to do to me? They can't fire me. I don't care if they tell people not to have me speak at conferences, right? Well, what they did is they actually started getting everyone to tell Pluralsight to remove my courses from Pluralsight platform.
They did.
Yes, and then Manning to remove my book, to unpublish my book, and both Pluralsight and Manning caved. So so anyone who wants to unsubscribe from those things, if you'd like to, go for it, because they're kind of bastards for caving to social justice warriors. And
so your courses and books, they've been unpublished?
my Pluralsight courses are removed from Pluralsight's platform, and I'm no longer listed as an author. They basically erased me as an author. And
John,
then,
what does your contract with them say?
I mean, it says they can remove courses. It's their discretion, which they, they've removed a bunch of my courses prior to this, as they've replaced them with courses from other authors covering the exact same thing, but at a lower royalty rate, which seems to be their strategy.
I guess what my question is because the contract, because I was accepted as an author on Pluralsight a while back, and I just never published anything. And I think my contract said something to the effect of, as long as they had my content published on Pluralsight, that I couldn't make a similar course for anyone else or publish one anywhere else. And I'm wondering if you have the original materials and your contract says that, has that non-competitive language in there, since they've taken your courses down, just go post them all for free on YouTube.
Well, I can do that, but I can't use the exact video. I can use all the materials. I can use the transcript, the verbiage of it, but I have to re-record them.
Oh, okay.
So, which I thought about, and I may do, but yeah. So that ended up happening, and then Manning also, they decided to stop publishing Soft Skills and not publish the second edition of the book, which actually turns out to be a good thing for me, because as much as they're doing that to, whatever effect that they think that they're having, the fact of the matter is that the rights revert back to me now.
I was going to say, is that a breach of contract? Do you get the rights back now? So yeah.
I do get the rights back. So I get to publish the book, and instead of only taking 10% of the sales of the book, I get 100%. So
they give only 10%. Is that the industry standard?
I can hardly hear you.
I didn't hear that.
Is that the industry standard? You get like 10%, that kind of?
Yeah, that's pretty much the industry standard. So
yeah, I've seen it 6 to 15%. I think Pragmatic Programmers does like 50%, but they're the exception.
Yeah. But yeah, so I get the book rights back. But I mean, regardless, pretty messed up. You know, when they try to claim they're not a mob and that they're they're just fighting for good and for right. It's hard to see that. Now, again, I'm not justifying the shit that I said on Twitter. I said some nasty shit. I called a bunch of people names and stuff, and I was purposely inflammatory. But I wasn't explicitly sexist or racist, you know. But what they did was they took things that could be interpreted as sexist or racist, and they twisted it to make it look like a pattern. So
yeah, well, and it was interesting there too because they're coming and they're saying he was being sexist and misogynist, and I wasn't going to come out and try and defend anything you said one way or the other. But,
yeah.
I went and looked because I was like, well, what the heck? I was like, was he out there calling them, sexist names or racist names? No. And one person tried to tell me, well, he was calling me animals and things like that. He came out and he said, you folks are a pack of wolves, which is a metaphor that's widely used in modern language to mean that you people are coming in and tearing somebody apart.
Oh,
right?
because it was a black woman. Suddenly, I'm calling them animals.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying?
Right, exactly. Because you said it's a one black woman, and you went after all kinds of people. They weren't all black. They weren't all women. They weren't all one or the other.
It just so happened that the reason why the people that I quote attacked were disproportionate, whatever. Were more, black women was because those were the people that were mostly attacking Amy.
That was the group involved. Yep.
I respond to everyone that was attacking Amy. I respond to guys. I called them pussies. I responded to, it didn't matter. I was indiscriminately, attacking whoever was attacking her. Again, not necessarily the smartest move and not the most, it's not my finest moment, but at the same time, like it wasn't a racist or sexist thing at all. In fact, the biggest thing that I got raked over the coals for was one of the women, the black woman who had said something about being discriminated in the workplace, and someone had said that she should just shut her mouth or that she should just be happy. She should be happy to be there. As I replied and said, you should shut your mouth and you should be happy to be there. We should all be happy to be there, to be here, and we shouldn't try to judge other people or something like or tear other people apart. That's what I said, I think. And then in response to that, another woman replied and said, how dare you have the gall to tell a woman to shut her mouth? Which I promptly replied, shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Because
there is no upside to these Twitter fights, though. I mean,
no, there's no upside.
It's one of those things that you first of all, you cannot convince anybody about anything, right? And then there is no upside and potential huge downside. Right. So it's
this is what I had a lot of people tell me over the course of the last few days.
But here's the question:
is that I went through some stuff a couple of years ago with Ruby Rogues, and a lot of it basically came down to that there were a couple of opportunities I had to speak up, and I felt like that would have been the right thing to do, and I didn't do it. And, after that, I decided, you know what, no matter what, I'm going to do what I feel like is the right thing. And what it really boiled down to wasn't, to go hand to hand to these people, because I could really care less what they think. And I didn't believe I was going to convince anybody, right? But what they were doing to Amy wasn't right. And I felt like the right thing for me to do was actually to getting them back around. And ultimately, what I wanted to see happen was I wanted to be able to sit down with these folks and just have a conversation and understand where they're coming from. And apparently that's like the worst thing you can ask them to do, because all of a sudden now, and I said, I bet I can even get John to show up, right? If you want to, argue these points with him. And boy, they didn't want to talk to John at all, which is fine. He wasn't very nice. I get that. But they didn't want to explain it. And I basically we don't have to explain it to you.
Well, okay. So two things. One, the reason why, I understand that getting into the battle on Twitter is often not productive and whatnot. But the reason why it matters is because who's going to stand up to these people? Because it's not like they're just saying mean stuff and picking on people on Twitter. They are basically using a mob justice and a mob rule to intimidate people, to destroy their careers, right? To basically, destroy people and cancel them. And they even say that they're cancel culture. So it's not like, they're just expressing their viewpoints and let's not argue with them. So it does matter that we do need to stand up to these people. Now, I didn't do it in the right way. I'll agree with that, but we do need to stand up. And then the other thing I was going to say, I got to jump off of here because I'm at my appointment. But who did invite me to speak was there's a Facebook group called Black Tech or Black People in Tech, and they have about 1,000 members on their Facebook group, and they asked me to speak and to talk about it, and they were very cool and they're very open, and I had a good hour-long conversation with them, and so I don't want to paint every single group. It's certain people, right? It's a certain group of people that are these social justice warriors. It's not every single Black person or woman on Twitter, or even not every feminist, or they some of them just have different viewpoints, but they're not the ones that are attacking people and necessarily. But there's a certain group
but I also feel that these platforms like Twitter, when they magnify because of it's not a live discussion going on, so they tend to magnify because they have to pack in a lot of punch in those few words.
Exactly.
So it magnifies. If you actually meet these people on either side, actually some people some people are on the right, some of my friends, and a lot of my friends are on the left, and sometimes even on the extreme left. And if you have a discussion with them on social media, they are different people.
Exactly.
Versus when you have the same discussion on regular thing, then you find there is so much more common between you and the other person. But there's something about social media, Twitter and others, that it amplifies. Maybe it's because people cannot write all those things. It's not a discussion. You don't read what the person is saying. You're just reading their text. So it does amplify some of that effect.
Yeah, that's why I did a video instead of trying to reply to all of it on Twitter, was because
All right, guys, I got to jump off here.
Okay.
Oh, I never turned my video on. I just realized that. Hey.
Okay. Hi.
All right.
All right. Enjoy, John.
Yeah.
But the issue for me is that, I couldn't give enough context or background or, explain things in a way that made any sense.
Right.
In 280 characters. And trying to break it up over several tweets didn't make sense either. So anyway, but yeah, I am fortunate that I'm kind of in the same position as John, in the sense that they can't get me fired, right?
Right.
Things like that. I had a bunch of people saying that they didn't want, well, I'm unsubscribing from all the stuff from devcat.tv, and it's like, well, that stuff's out there to help you out, but if you don't want it, I mean, that I want to help people, but if they don't want my help, I mean, there's nothing I can do about that.
Right.
And yeah, at this point, if anything, I've made a bunch of friends from it, and which is probably not what any of them want to hear. I found a bunch of people have been victimized this way, and I had a couple of people actually come to me and say, "Dude, you're not the right person to fight this fight," and I kind of agree, but I don't see where that person is. Like, I don't see that person out there, and at this point,
but it's also whether
the fight is worth fighting.
That's fair, but
right.
Ultimately, I don't think anyone's going to win this fight, right? One way or the other.
Nobody. I mean, it's one of those things, right? There is this saying, win stupid. What is it called? Win stupid games and play stupid games and win stupid prizes. Right.
Oh, nice.
So,
I like it.
so it is basically, okay, even if you win, right? First of all, there is no winning, right? And secondly, it doesn't do anything, right?
Yeah.
Unless you are a TV personality or somebody who's or politician whose
Yeah.
whose livelihood depends on being
Winning
in the
election.
news all the time, right? Or being
Yeah.
in those conversations.
Yeah.
For
ultimately,
us, yeah, there is
for me,
for yeah, political things have very little. So I have a funny thing is that I got some people were pissed off on me when I wrote a blog. So my blog is a technical blog. I was explaining a concept called principal component analysis, where I said that, if you look at all the people in the United States, the population is about 350 million. You would expect them to have a much diverse set of views.
Mhm.
But I can ask 4 or 5 questions to a person and tell everything about their political views, right? And that is what is principal component analysis. It's basically dimensionality reduction. You have, even though each person can be, you can think of them as the space is 350 million dimensions, but actually that is not true. The actual dimensions is maybe 5, right? You can categorize people in 5 different dimensions. And and I just, to just joke, I said that because people are sheep. And people,
It's true.
I mean, it's just a joke. I
To a
did
certain
not even
degree, it's true.
Yeah, I mean,
100%.
people
But to a
try
certain
to,
degree, yeah.
that's the whole essence of clustering. You have to, they tend to cluster in groups, and people
That's
were
what
angry at me for that. I was like, I'm not going to change my language. If you don't like the blog, you can not visit the blog. That's perfectly fine. But the whole point of me doing things independently is that I don't have to worry about what words I use, right? As long as there are some offensive words which nobody should use, right? But
Yeah.
you cannot control my speech to that extent, right?
Right.
Especially if I'm not being disrespectful to any particular group, right? I'm talking in being general. Yeah. So, well, that was my little brush with controversy, but
Yeah.
not much.
Well, ultimately, when I talk about winning, I'm not talking about convincing anybody that I'm right. I'm not even necessarily talking about getting these people to stop doing what they're doing. Ultimately, what I really wanted was I just wanted to reach some level of understanding between folks so that we can have conversations where problems exist, and at the very minimum so that we can understand each other even if we're not going to agree with each other. And I figured out pretty darn fast that they're not even interested in that. So at this point, if somebody wants to talk and have a real conversation about it, I'm totally open to doing that. If I start getting called names or anything, I'll hang up. But the other deal is that I really just want people to be able to come into the technology space and have a great career, have a great life. And I don't really want anybody to have to care what their racial or gender or anything else, what their characteristics are, right? They should just be able to come in and participate at whatever level they want. And the problem is that because so many people come in with different agendas and they act the way that they act, sometimes their first encounter is with somebody that's going to drive them right back out. And I worry a little about that, right? That they're going to come in, they're going to see this angry behavior, and then they're just going to be like, I don't want any part of this. Where in reality, if it's like, okay, we'll move over to this adjacent community, they're going to welcome you with open arms, and they're going to help you, be successful wherever you're at. And, and so I worry that people are going to miss something that is going to be really good for them because of some of this influence. And I'm also worried that as this becomes more polarized and more toxic, that eventually, people are going to, go deeper and deeper in their holes, and that we're going to get to a place where we can't ever talk about some of these issues. And then I'm afraid we won't be able to solve them. I can't hear you at all. I think you're muted.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, so somehow I feel that these things are often self-correcting. You know, uh, it
I
swings
hope
back
so.
and forth.
I really hope so.
Yeah, it will self-correct, and it's also. I mean, there has been a history of there is a very valid reason for a lot of these people having concerns, right?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that's totally
yeah,
fair. That
there,
stuff's
there,
happened.
that stuff has happened, right? I know from like in India, it was even more extreme. I know my cousins, etc., who who were. It was difficult for them to get into engineering because of the culture around it. Even though you could say that okay, it was a fair system where anybody could apply for engineering and get into it, but parents' encouragement and those kinds of things were there. I mean, there is it was so I used to say that, if you find, in India at least, if you find a woman and a man in engineering who look, uh, who are at the same level, you should hire the woman because she has come through much more hardship and to come to the same level, right? So they tend to be, you could say that slightly better off. They are fighters in that sense.
Yeah.
So there is that there is I can see why people uh, overreact to such situations. It's understandable, but somehow I feel that things are swinging way more than they should to one side or the other, and it's happening on the right as well as the left.
Oh yeah.
And at places where it shouldn't be, right? I mean, in tech, uh, basically it's almost like you're talking politics everywhere, uh, everywhere, right? Even in tech, every little thing is seen with that lens, and then it becomes problematic.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting too because I've actually had conversations with people, and I've been the one saying, no, you can't do that. Where I've talked to a couple people that have told me, well, if I have a bunch of candidates, I'm not going to hire a woman because I don't want to deal with the possibility of backlash if things don't work out with her. And I'm telling them they're wrong, right? And
That's completely wrong. Yeah.
it is completely wrong. But things have become so polarized that a lot of people are opting out because they don't even want to deal with it. And so I worry that it's going to swing that way too.
Right.
And so, I don't know what the answer is. That's why I want people to talk. The other thing is a lot of people have come to me and said, well, you need to follow more diverse people on Twitter and then listen to them. And and I'm like, well, generally my Twitter usage looks a whole lot like, oh, it's Wednesday, I'm going to spend a half hour on Twitter.
Right.
And then next Wednesday, I'm going to spend a half hour on Twitter. I just don't spend a ton of time there. So I can follow more diverse people, but I just don't spend a whole lot of time, scrolling through my Twitter feed.
Right.
I spend a lot of time talking to people. And when I see somebody who has a point of view that I don't understand, my default reaction is to go to them and say, hey, can we have a conversation? Right? Because that's how I learn that stuff. And for all the people that that have come around and said, well, you need to talk to people with more diverse viewpoints, I've done a ton of that. Yeah. And a lot of it's been private because they don't want to publicly say some of the things that they're saying. And there are as many opinions on the diversity and culture issues as there are people that I talk to, So there are a lot of kind of similar main ideas in there. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people come down in a lot of different places on a lot of specific parts of the issue. And so, yeah, I had never run into anybody who was so militantly angry about this stuff to where they were just going to, go after anyone who didn't agree with them. And so I wanted to understand it. And so I reached out and I said, hey, let's talk. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, yeah, one way or the other, I want everybody to have a fair shake. And I feel like a lot of this it makes it harder to do that because if you pick the right person, then it can blow up in your face. And if you pick the wrong person, it can blow up in your face. And if you pick the mediocre person who fits all of the criteria that people give you, it can blow up in your face. And it's
Right.
because this stuff is so charged at this point that
Yeah.
you can't make a right decision. And so then you make the best decision you can and hope it doesn't blow up in your face. Right. And for the most part, people are good people. And I think that generally it won't.
Right.
But I've seen enough instances where somebody went in, they went way out of their way to hire somebody with the diversity credentials, went way out of their way to make sure they fit in. For whatever reason, it didn't work out. And, you know, and granted, I don't have all the details, right? But then what winds up happening is the company's claiming they didn't work out because, you know, whatever. And they basically say whatever they can say legally, right? Because when you let somebody go, generally you can't give a ton of details legally. That
Right.
person comes out and says, well, they were sexist or racist or whatever.
Right.
And there's no way to actually get enough information to, you know, determine if and where the fault is, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
you know,
So
than anyone
what you're
else,
saying,
I've seen people split up just because it wasn't a good cultural fit, right? I wanted this, they wanted that, it didn't work out, I went somewhere else.
Yeah.
But we can't know that.
That's very tough, you know, because there is this problem that you may not be able to work with somebody for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
And if you start looking at it, and you may even be unfair to people, right? So
Right.
Everybody has biases, right? You see
Yep.
two people, right? And let's say I'm unfair to one white person more than the other, right? I'm partial, and that happens. No
Yep.
matter how hard you try, you have some inherent biases, and it will affect your judgment unconsciously, right?
Yep.
Now, if you do that, so you have two white people, and you somehow favor one white person, even without knowing it, right?
Yep.
Then it has nothing to do with the skin color, right? And you can have the exact same thing with a white person and a black person, and because it is now it can become an issue about race instead of some other personality trait which you just happen to not like or whatever, right? So that is really, really dangerous in the sense that if you see the world using that single lens of racism or sexism, you will find racism and sexism everywhere. And there is no getting around that. You will see everything as that.
Yeah. Now, I mean, in the instances where it's pretty obviously racism or sexism, I'm right there with those people, right? Yeah, you shouldn't be treated that way.
Yeah.
100%, right?
Yeah.
The issue is that I want to see some evidence before I go condemn somebody for their behavior, right?
Right.
And
so living in this country for 18 years, I have never faced a single instance of racism. Okay, I agree that I'm in California and things like that, but I personally have not faced a single instance of racism. There are other people I know who have, but that's quite remarkable if you think about it.
Yeah.
That I have not is quite remarkable. It says a lot about this country. My son, on the other hand, once somebody at his school, he's 9 right now. This happened when he was 4.5 or 5. So this little girl, she said that, oh, I don't like you because you are dark, right?
Mhm.
In fact, my son thought that he was the black kid. When people say black people, he actually thought that they are talking about it is him, right?
Right.
Because his skin tone was the darkest in the class, right?
Right.
And this person, this little girl, and I just, I was not really mad at that person because she's like a 5-year-old girl.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to, we finally told the teacher, and the reason was very different. The reason was not to punish the little girl. The reason was that the little girl can get into a lot of problems.
Right.
And now you could say there are two ways of looking at this, right? She said that, I don't like you because, and she kept teasing him, right? It was not one instance, it was a repeat. And then we finally decided to complain to the teacher that because you're dark, right? Now, you could say that the little girl was racist, right? And I actually don't, I mean, at that time, I thought that, didn't the parents teach her something? Like, that was the thought that came to my mind, right?
Yeah.
Then I thought about all the little things that used to happen when I was a kid, right? People would pick the things that were different, right?
Yeah.
About that person. So it was not racist in that sense, because if somebody had, let's say, a bigger nose, people would pick on the bigger nose, right? If somebody had bigger ears, the little kids, they would find that was slightly different about that person and magnify it, right? And that's what kids do, when they don't like somebody for whatever reason. So that instance was not really racist in the sense. 5-year-olds do not have that concept very, in their mind. And maybe it was, but there is another interpretation of it, right? Which is that it was probably not racist. It is just that that person, that 5-year-old kid, was trying to find something to tease, right? Which is sufficiently different. And that's what she picked on, right? She could have picked on his nose, and that would be equally bad. But people would say that that's
culturally acceptable.
Exactly. But the intent, I don't think, was racial in that sense, right? They're 5-year-old kids. What do they know? They make all kinds of, they say all kinds of things, right? And similarly, when little 5-year-old kids, they may say something about, oh, you're weak because you're a girl. It's not really they are sexist. They are learning things, right? I mean, these are little kids. So a lot of times, it happens in adult life also. If you see that people are not behaving properly, you have two lenses to look at it, right? So when I came here to the United States, the first month, people were I found people to be rude, kind of annoyed. I found that people were kind of annoyed when I talked to them. And there were two interpretations of it. One could be that, oh, these people, they are rude because of the skin tone. Or the other could be that the effort they had to put in to understand what I was saying was subconsciously making them irritated a little bit, right? Because you're trying to understand what this person is saying, and you're not understanding it. So you say, you ask for it again and again, and that leads to, it's not a smooth conversation. So it leads to a level of irritation that can look rude, right? So that was my interpretation that, oh, it is just, I just need to fix my accent and things will be fine, right?
Yeah.
And then I started switching my accent, and within a month, it was like, oh, everybody was, in fact, more polite than I can handle. In India, for example, if you're walking down the street, nobody smiles at you. That would be weird. But here, it's like I was in this awkward position. I have to smile back and things like that, or hold the door for you. Those things were pretty new to me. So yeah, I figured out, you have to see the thing with the right lens, and but you could see the thing with a different lens and come to a very different conclusion. You could come up with, oh, the world is a really bad place. Everybody's a racist. Everybody's a sexist. When what they are doing is a result of something, nothing related to race or gender.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that I want to understand. But
yeah.
Anyway, it's really been kind of an eye-opening experience. Not necessarily a pleasant one, but the other thing is that, yeah, I had this trip planned to Nashville for months. And so, I got on the airplane and I was basically, well, I'm going to be too busy to, and so I just kind of had to let whatever's happening on Twitter happen, because, I'm here for this other thing, and I'm not going to have time to go in and even look at it until Monday. So,
right.
So that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how much is blown up. on Monday. But yeah, I don't know.
I've not seen. I don't know what John said, so I don't know. I've not seen that fight. I just realized when you
He
guys
more or
started
less
talking.
summarized it. He just went after there
Yeah.
are probably a couple dozen people that he really went at hard. And so yeah, he really stirred it up really good. People were really not happy with him. And yeah, I mean, I can't justify the behavior. I know John, and I get some of the frustration that he's facing, but that that doesn't make it okay. At the same time though,
Right.
there's always more to the story, and so just whatever. But yeah, so yeah, so we'll keep trucking along, see where it ends up. But yeah. And then I guess in other news on the business end of things, so I finished my book cover finally for my book, so we're getting ready to launch it in a few weeks. And then I've been talking about Max Coders on and off on the show, and I've decided to back burner that until the beginning of next year, just because it's just too much. And I'm trying to get some help on doing some of the sponsorship outreach and stuff. And I think Josh, actually, who was on this show before you, it sounds like he or somebody he knows might be interested in helping out. So yeah, that may all come to fruition soonish. But yeah. So I'm probably just going to go disappear into this retreat here for the next couple of days, and then we'll see where things end up on Sunday or Monday.
Right.
But yeah. Anyway, I've got to go and grab the rest of my stuff so I can get out of here, because they let me stay in here until noon instead of 11, which was nice of them. I want to make sure I'm out by noon then. So
yes. Okay, well, stay out of trouble.
yeah, sorry this wound up being all about the diversity.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, I do hope that John doesn't use that kind of language, because if he used, I have not seen the Twitter fight, but
yeah,
there are simpler ways of handling these things, or not even getting into it. For me, I don't think it's my fight. That's not the fight I want to fight.
Yeah, at this point, really, I just if I can facilitate understanding, I want to. If somebody else gets beat over the head with this stuff, I don't want them to feel like they're alone or that they're not welcome in the programming community.
Right.
But other than that, yeah, I mean, I really don't believe that me on my own, I'm going to be able to change any hearts or minds or anything like that. and I don't think I really believed that before either. But I have come to the conclusion that some of these folks are less willing to actually come and have a conversation than I originally thought.
Right. Well, the most of the people I'm guessing are all the colored people. They are like me, right? They are probably very thankful to be in this country and participate in the prosperity of this country, and a lot of them I don't think have faced much discrimination, if any, especially in places like the coastal regions, right? And the people who are against you, I think it's a tough fight. I don't think anybody's going to win.
Yeah. Well,
the funny part is that
I don't care about winning.
Right. Yeah, anyway. It was a interesting conversation.
Yeah.
All right then. So we'll see you next week. Yeah,
I'll be here next week.
Oh, I'm not 100% sure I'll be here next week. I'm going to a conference, and I may not be back by then. Or even if I'm back, it may be pretty late in the night, and I don't know whether I'll be able to get up.
Okay. Yeah. We won't wait for you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. See you, Satya.
Bye. Thanks.